So before we dive deeper, I really want to discuss why the consumer decision journey is such a helpful model. How can it really help you build your brand and how do you use this framework? The consumer decision journey is most helpful in diagnosing barriers to purchase. Why are they going through this journey and not making the purchase decision of buying your brand? Once you figure that out, you then have a shot in influencing that particular journey and guide them toward buying your brand. Quick recap. Here's the consumer decision journey model. Start with the trigger, goes into initial consideration, goes into active evaluation, lands in purchase. And then with a positive post-purchase experience, a loyalty loop may be formed that may lead to repurchase. So if a consumer goes through this particular journey and does not land in purchasing your brand, where did we lose them? What went wrong? How do we get them back on track? How do we guide them toward buying your particular brand? Let's go through a very concrete example. Here's the example. It's about shopping for a car. The trigger. My car stopped running. Initial consideration. I had a Volkswagen, so I will look at that again. I've also seen commercials for Kia, so I will check that out too. Active evaluation. I read consumers' reports, I researched online and test drove both the Volkswagen and Kia. Purchase. I decided on the Volkswagen and bought the car. Post-purchase. I really like my Volkswagen and a loyalty loop is formed. This Volkswagen is great. I will always buy Volkswagen from now on. So this is the example of a consumer decision journey. It started with a car stopped running, go through the research, landed in buying Volkswagen, and even with a positive post-purchase experience and created a loyal consumer. So this is great. But now let's think about what could have gone wrong and what could have detoured this particular journey and land them somewhere else. And therefore, a consumer goes into this journey and not buying your brand. So let's brainstorm a little bit. What if the car runs fine? In the example, the consumer was triggered into entering this journey because the car stopped running. That was when a need for purchase became apparent. But what if the car runs fine? Then how do they even go into this journey? If they don't start this journey at all, they're not going to end up somewhere where they'll be buying you. So you may need to create a need. You may need to say, yeah, your car runs fine, but it could run better. Or maybe, oh, now there's a more gas efficient model and you really need a new car. So you need to do something to trigger them to enter this journey at all. Initial consideration. In this example, Volkswagen is in the shortlist because it was a previous purchase. Kia, because of brand exposure, is also on the shortlist. Again, in the initial consideration, the consumer forms a shortlist based on brand exposure, brand perception. Question is, what if you're Ford? If you're not on this list, then what happens? Now, Kia got on this list because of advertising, because they're exposing consumer to this brand and creating certain brand perception and creating certain brand awareness. If you're Ford, what can you do to get on this list? Is advertising the answer, or what else may be the answer for you to get on this list? Now, like I said before, whether or not you're on the initial consideration list or not, is not the end all and be all. The active evaluation phase is very important. For example, what if in the test drive, the car dealer suggests test driving a Prius? And all of a sudden, if you were Volkswagen or Kia, you are well on your way to being purchased. But now, during this research, a whole new choice become apparent as a potential contender. Then you have a whole new competition. And for Prius, maybe it's this whole eco-friendly and you don't necessarily have something to compete. So during this research phase, a whole new option may present itself. So what are they finding during this research phase? Is it in your favor or is it working against you? Purchase. What if I test drove the Volkswagen, I like the Volkswagen, I go to the car dealer and say, I want to buy a Volkswagen and I want it in red because I've always had a red car. But what if the car you want wasn't on the lot? What if the car the consumer want wasn't available? If they always want a red car, maybe they will ultimately say, you know what, the Kia wasn't that bad either, and I really need a car because my car stopped running, so I'll drive off with the Kia. If you're a Volkswagen, you just lost that sale. Now, this goes into different example as well. For example, you go to the grocery store, you have your shopping list, and you say spaghetti sauce, and you always pick up brand A spaghetti sauce because that's the one that you always buy, that's the one your kids love. You go to the grocery store, you go to the spaghetti sauce aisle, brand A, out of stock. There is no brand A spaghetti sauce on the shelf. You promised the kids spaghetti. What do? Okay, brand B was available. Okay, I guess I'll pick that up. If you're a brand A, you were on the list. The consumer was in front of the aisle. Because you were not available, you lost that sale. Now, there's different barriers potentially, but this is definitely one example where you may lose, even if you're that close to closing the deal. Post-purchase is always about the positive brand experience, right? But what if it doesn't run as well as expected? Like, did you create too high of an expectation, or maybe the car somehow just had more function and like I can't figure out even how to turn on the light. So how can you manage that post-purchase experience? Loyalty loop. What if you couldn't build loyalty? What if you couldn't really just create this brand ambassador for you, and therefore you have to work all over again to get him or her to consider you again the next time? So this is where we want to think about how do you use the consumer decision journey to think about barriers to purchase. And as you're going through the rest of the lecture, keep this in mind. Think about it in your lens of your brand. Start to think about where are the barriers to purchase and how you can use this framework and use this model to help you identify the problem and therefore start to put in a plan to guide the consumer toward the decision that you want and influence them toward buying you.